after that, the movie turns into a typical, mostly copy the Jaws formula movie. Although events play out distinctively enough, and the movie does keep the action exciting enough to make it entertaining and a fun movie in its own way. Now, there are actually two Megalodon that appear in the film. The first, which they track and try to kill several times before succeeding, and I thought the film was going to be over soon after the first one was caught, which the first one actually really looks on the small side for Megalodon's approximate range of adult sizes. The estimate for most common maximum, well, not maximum, the thing about all animals is that very few of them in the wild ever approach their maximum possible adult size. So what Megalodon could reach versus what most of them might have reached. Let's go with the might have reached, or what they probably commonly were when they were alive. Estimates usually between 50 and 60 feet. I've heard up to 70 or 80. I really think that's pushing it. So the first one in this movie looks to be on the larger side of some of the otodus sharks preceding Megalodon. The second is on the way big side, even for Megalodon. So, I'm going to talk about some things I like about this movie, and a few things that I thought were ridiculous even for this premise, and all sorts of similar opinions. First, I'll say again, this movie was a lot more fun than I thought it would be. And it was amazing to go with paleontologists when they were hosting the premiere of the movie, and we had Megalodon teeth out along with some other shark teeth, and there was a Q&A at the end, which we had pretty typical questions that you could guess. I'll talk a little bit at the end of this about some of the questions and answers that we did get. There were some interesting ones. Most of them were what you'd expect, but as for what I like and not so much like about the movie, I like most of the characters, especially Jason Statham's character, Jonas Taylor. I thought he was a fairly realistic portrayal of someone with his character's backstory, without being too depressed or negative. He had very believable and sympathetic reactions to the people and events going on around him, except with his ex-wife character, and the absurdity mostly came from her end. It's not as bad as in other films, but she was way too supportive of him forming a relationship with Suyin. Ex-wives are not that supportive. I've not had ex-wives myself, thank God, but my father unfortunately has, which actually made life really tough for the kids as well. Ex-wives and stepmothers are hell. There is a reason that wicked stepmothers are a staple in fairy tale. They are very much real. Often really turning a good father's children away from trusting marriage at all. Thankfully, this one isn't that important to the movie, and we soon do get to move on to Jonas and Suyin gradually forming a relationship. And they have a very cute and believable dynamic throughout the movie. Although, I do have to say that since Suyin already has a child, the question immediately comes to mind, what happened to Mei Ying's father? The only information we get is me saying that her mom married a jerk, and I'm making quote gestures with my fingers as I say this because, that could mean anything. It's often what mothers will tell the kids to cover up their mistakes. And if true, if that's true, if that's what happened, that means Su Yin's judgment is pretty suspect as well. I like Su Yin's father, Dr. Minwei Zhang. I actually would have liked to get to know more about him. In fact, as I've talked about in vlogs before, what I'd like to see from a Megalodon movie is a living population of Megalodon, undiscovered before, coming to notice after giant whales start washing up on beaches with great chunks of their bodies ripped out, tails chomped off. The sorts of signs we'd actually find hinting at an existing population of huge whale-eating sharks. And a veteran marine ecologist character like Dr. Shane would be a great main character, point of view character for a movie like that. He's a person who would be in charge of going and finding out what's going on. After the first Meg is caught and killed in this movie, and I think it's the financier guy who says to him, "We won." This is the realistic-minded scientist who also acknowledges the tragedy of the situation that's just unfolded. He says, "We did what people always do, discover, then destroy." Now, I think that's a little harsh to apply to everything that we try to go and discover. We do often do so with respect for the planet and preservation in mind. But what also so often happens is that consequences, both foreseen and unintended, get out of control rather quickly and rather unsalvageable. That's why we have to be careful and not bury studies like a lot of universities are starting to do now. It's a gigantic betrayal of science. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to point out before we talk about the second Meg. That one's even huger than I think most real-life Megalodon actually grew, just from what its size appears to be in the movie. When the Mana 1 crew first surfaces, they find a shark finning boat chomped to pieces. We see little dead sharks with their fins sliced off, just to put in shark fin soup. And this sadly is something that goes on in real life. It's something that is not necessary, and it really is an ecological detriment and catastrophe with no real human advantage other than people just like shark fin soup. The fishermen will catch live sharks, slice their fins off, then throw them back to die. The sharks can't survive because their fins are their locomotion, their movement through the water. So it's a cruel and agonizing death, and the only realistic way to put a stop to that practice is for people to stop rejecting eating shark fin soup at all. In this movie, though, as they say, the Megalodon has evened the score with the shark finners. The problem is that it happens entirely off-screen. We never see it. Why? We only see the splintered ruins of the boat, and that was a gigantic missed opportunity. We could have gotten a realistically gruesome look at the practice of shark finning, as I just described, which actually, had we seen in the film, this film had already done very well at box offices. This film This film has already done very well at box offices around the world, so it's been hugely successful, and had we seen the cruelty of shark finning on screen right in front of us, that well could have inspired the beginnings of more rejection of shark fin soup. And then for the sense of satisfaction of revenge in the film as we're watching it, had we seen the Megalodon leap out of the water with the shark finning boat in its jaws, and listen to the screams in the nanoseconds before the ship is crunched into splinters that the Manawan crew soon after comes across, that is all we actually see in the movie. That, I think, was the biggest obvious missed opportunity in and of the film. I also think the final Megalodon's attack on the beach is less epic than it could have been. It's the clash of Su Yin and Jonas versus the second giant Meg that's where the epicness really lies. I do think the beach in the last location was ironically too shallow and too crowded to give us one last thriller-style shark attack stage. I'll have to watch it again after the movie comes out to buy, and maybe I'll do a live commentary or review on it. So maybe I'll see again then if I still feel the same way. But the process of the protagonists trying absolutely everything at their disposal to try and take out the Meg, and failing until literally that last leap out of the water, which I will not give away details about, was awesome. And even to top that off, watching the Meg sink into the depths, eaten alive by smaller sharks, made me a little sad for it at the end. So, one last fusion of awesomeness and then a little pang of sorrow, maybe even regret at the climax. And I have to say, this was probably the most enjoyable shark attack movie to come out in a very long time. The Meg, for me, ranks maybe second only to the original Jaws.